What's up guys, my name is Sean from White Jade Productions, and today I want to talk about the issue on YouTube where people are thinking mirrorless cameras are cinema cameras. They're not, they're completely different, but I figured out where everybody went wrong on YouTube. I finally came to the conclusion as to why people think mirrorless cameras are cinema cameras, because they're not. They're very different. And in this video, we're gonna talk about why people think they are, the gray area, and what actual DPs think, and the real differences really summed up because it's just too long of a video. I would have to make like an hour-long video to get into the differences. There's so many. But first, let's get into the why. Me and my buddies Ryan and Caleb were over at my place and we were shooting a video on why people dislike Sony. I pulled those two in because they're both Sony shooters and I wanted to get their opinion. You can watch that video up there or in the description below. There are two parts. There's me kind of giving my take on it and them giving theirs. So be sure to watch both if that interests you, because it's pretty deep and kind of complicated, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. In that video though, we had this epiphany that people misunderstood YouTubers somewhere along the way. YouTubers say a lot that certain mirrorless cameras have cinema camera quality images or something along that line. We found that they were saying that and we agreed with that. When you look at an FX3 compared to, an ARRI Alexa LF, you're gonna see a very similar image. Obviously, there's some differences in the skin tone, the dynamic range, and the overall brightness of the image, as well as just sharpness and quality. However, they do look remarkably similar. And I would say that cameras like all of Blackmagic's Pocket line, a lot of the flagship Sony cameras, a lot of the flagship Canon cameras, the flagship Lumix cameras, all of Fuji's cameras, they all look like they have cinema camera level quality. However, viewers didn't hear cinema camera level quality, they just heard cinema camera. And unfortunately, that caused a snowball effect of cinema cameras. Obviously, Sony picked up on this with the A7S III. They heard that that camera was being called a cinema camera and they were like, well, what if we just make that camera again, give it a few extra tally lights, remove the EVF, supposedly give it better autofocus. They gave it slightly better dynamic range. Has the same sensor, same processor as the A7S III, but they just labeled it cinema line. Now they didn't call it a cinema camera. They just put it in the cinema line. If you wanted to use it as a crash cam, along with your Sony Venice or FX9, it'd be great. It would fit along very well. That's kind of where the Komodo sits, and we'll talk about that later. But it's not a cinema camera. And people started talking about the FX3. It was so hard to get your hands on. I don't know why it's so much more popular than the A7S III. It's really not that much different. But ultimately, YouTubers said it has cinema camera level quality. Again, I agree with that, but that's not what the people heard. The people heard cinema camera, and that translates to Lumix S5 2X, that translates to the Blackmagic pocket cameras, that translates over to Canon's mirrorless cameras. People think they're cinema cameras, and they are not. Next, I want to talk about the gray area. This is why people get confused, because there is no hard cut seamless line anymore. It is now a very smudged blur gray area, and it's hard to tell what's a cinema camera and what's not. When you have the pocket cameras come on the scene, you look at those and you go, okay, that to me has raw, technically, it's been debayered, but it's technically raw. Love B-raw, best raw codec to work with. R3D is the best raw codec though. I stand by that. Most DPs stand by that. But the fact that it was even close to R3D as a codec, very impressive. The fact that Blackmagic got that close is very shocking, very impressive. And it convinced a lot of people that they are cinema cameras. The problem is mini SDI. That's going to be pretty useless on set when your AC shows up with their follow focus kit and they're like, all right, great, I'm ready to plug my wireless transmitter in, and you don't have an adapter for that. That's going to be awkward. When the sound guy shows up on set and they are like, hey, I'm ready to plug in my wireless transmitter for the audio, and you have mini XLR and not XLR, that's going to be awkward. when you decide that, oh, you know, I need time code and all of your other ports are taken up with a million other things from your AC and your sound mixer, and now you have nowhere to put your time code. Again, it's going to be really awkward because you don't have a cinema camera because it doesn't meet a lot of the requirements on set. Doesn't mean it can't be used for it. If everybody on set knows what's up, they're able to prepare for that, and that's fine. However, a lot of the times, if you show up on set, especially larger sets, more impromptu sets, commercials, stuff like that, you're just going to show up with your rig and your kit, and you have an expectation to be able to work with everybody else around you seamlessly and not run into any issues. If the sound mixer and the AC show up and they're not able to use their stuff with your camera, that's on you, and the producer and the director will see that, and you probably won't get recommended for a job, which is why cinema cameras are cinema cameras. They meet that standard, that typical understanding of what a camera is supposed to do on set. It's supposed to have certain features, and every DP I talk to who does narrative work or commercial work full-time, they're freelance DPs. By the way, if you don't know, I'm not a freelance DP. I run a production company. That means I do a lot of different things. Honestly, I shoot a lot of weddings, I shoot a lot of sports, I do shoot a lot of commercials, I do my fair share of narrative work. You know, I'm looking to get into more documentary stuff this year just because I haven't done a whole lot of it. You know, looking to shoot a feature film with my production company soon, not freelance feature film, but something within my production company, which will be real cool. More info on that later, but that's what I do. I shoot all the stuff. I do a lot of things. Commercial and music video stuff is kind of my passion. That's what I love doing. That's kind of what I target. But I do a lot of things because I don't love doing just one thing. I would never want to be a freelance DP shooting commercials or narrative feature films or TV shows 24/7. That's just not my speed. But the guys who do that know a whole lot more than I do. They have a lot more experience than I do. And pretty much all of the ones that I've talked to and I'm friends with who do this full time tell me that the Komodo, the Pixis, and the FX6 are gray area cinema cameras. They don't really agree that they are cinema cameras. They think of them as C cams, maybe a B cam, or a crash cam on real productions, on budgeted productions, on non-indie productions, on union productions. Those just aren't really thought of as cinema cameras. Even though on the YouTube space especially, they are thought of as cinema cameras. Why? Because they're so much better than everything else, but they don't cost what a cinema camera costs. A $6,000 camera just is not the same quality as a $60,000 camera. And there's a reason for that. The Burano is a different beast than the FX6. The Burano is meant to be middle ground for the bridge between kind of mirrorless and broadcast and cinema. The Burano is the middle ground, not the FX6, not the Komodo, not the Pixis. However, while I personally think they are cinema cameras, that's kind of my take. The DPs who actually work in that field and do that day to day tend to think otherwise. And since I don't do that, while my opinion may be different, I'm going to have to agree with them because I don't feel like personally I have an argument to build against that just because I don't have that experience and I don't work in that world day to day. And that's why I think YouTube thinks mirrorless cameras are cinema cameras. When you move into a space where people do use cinema cameras for everything, the Komodo FX6 and Pixis don't seem like cinema cameras. So the FX3, S5 2X, the R5 II, and the Blackmagic 6K definitely aren't cinema cameras. Those are the BTS guys' cameras. Legitimately, those are the BTS guys' cameras. So really, to kind of wrap this all up and conclude it, people just misheard on YouTube. People misheard cinema camera level image quality with cinema camera. They got confused, and now we're here. Now people don't know what a cinema camera is. It's tricky. I get it. It's hard. And sometimes, yes, mirrorless cameras are better for the job that you're trying to do. When you shoot social media stuff, the FX3 is hands down the king, 100%. If you're shooting sports, Sony, the GOAT. Absolutely. I wouldn't disagree with it. Weddings, Canon, and Sony rule that market. It's phenomenal. Not saying you can't use other things, but they rule that market. However, when it comes to shooting cinema, true cinema, There are cameras for that. That's really all I have for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, and until next time.